Hi, and welcome to Concert 101. My name's Alethea Coombe, and I'm the Artist Liaison with the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra. You're in for a real treat of a concert this week, with lush and heavy-hitting works by SIBELIUS, RACHMANINOV and SHOSTAKOVICH, conducted by Estonian-based conductor Olari Elts, and featuring pianist Alexey Yemtsov. Our concert this week opens with En Saga by Finnish composer John Sibelius. En Saga, meaning fairy tale, saga or legend, is a tone poem for orchestra. Tone poems were a popular musical form in the mid to late 19th century and are usually single movement pieces inspired by literature or visual art. Indeed, Sibelius himself was musically inspired by the Kalevala, the Finnish national epic, and based his Lemminkainen suite from this. However, unusually for tone poems, En Saga is not based on an existing work. Instead, it was loosely inspired by the spirit of the province of Karelia, which Sibelius explored while on his honeymoon, as well as his recent psychological experiences. Sibelius says of this work, En Saga is psychologically one of my most profound works. I could say that the whole of my youth is contained within it. It's an expression of a state of mind. I had undergone a number of painful experiences at the time. In no other work have I revealed myself so completely. It is for this reason that I find all literary explanations quite alien. So I think Sibelius is challenging you, the listener, to make up your own narrative to En Saga. So sit back and let your imagination run wild. But here is a bit of what I hear. En Saga begins with swirling arpeggios, like flurries of wind, snow, or the eddies of great rivers. From the woodwinds emerges a shy, painful melody with awkward cadence. To me, this is our protagonist or hero trying to find their voice. This voice is shared around the orchestra, finally blossoming with the cellos. And a cellorando gives the first dramatic action. Our hero has scaled their first peak, led by the violins. We then reach a point of stability, with a melody in the violas. Our protagonist has found their momentum. Suddenly, things get much more interesting when a counter-melody appears in the violins. A new voice, a new character. Someone lithe, supple, and exotic. There's some swagger, some highs and lows, some otherworldly sounds, and a strange dance. In the final climax, you might see and hear the French horns play chiuso, muting and stopping the sound with a hand, giving a dramatic and distinct effect. After the clash of the cymbals, our protagonist sinks down to the weeds, where a lonely clarinet plays a mournful melody. We finish our tale hearing the echoes of former adventures, now but a distant memory. The next work on our program tonight is Sergei Rachmaninov's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor, Opus 18, played by Hobart-based pianist Alexey Yemtsov. In the years preceding the composition of this work, a young Rachmaninoff had sunk into a deep depression. This was primarily due to the disastrous premiere of his first symphony, which was under-rehearsed and culminated in a poor performance by the possibly intoxicated conductor Alexander Glazunov. As it became clear that the depression was long-lasting, Rachmaninoff's family leapt into action. He even met with Leo Tolstoy to talk through his writer's block. But it was a therapist that landed his breakthrough. Nikolai Dahl saw Rachmaninoff daily for 3 months and used hypnotherapy techniques, including repeating this mantra while the composer was half asleep. You will begin to write your concerto. You will work with great facility. The concerto will be of an excellent quality. The treatment worked. And even though it was a nerve-wracking premiere with Rachmaninoff as soloist and his cousin as conductor, it was a great success. The concerto was dedicated to his therapist, Nikolai Dahl. Knowing this background, It's hard to not hear this concerto as an emotional landscape, expressing both beauty and tragedy, self-doubt and inner confidence. The first movement is in sonata form, with an exposition, development and recapitulation. The piano opens totally alone, with a pedal in the left hand and a harmonic progression in the right that is reminiscent of ringing bells. The drama builds until the orchestra bursts in, with a melody in the violins, viola and clarinet. They all play in their lower registers, with dark colours and an uneasy and restless character. The second theme is introduced by the clarinets and violas, and when the piano takes over, you might notice that the phrase structure is very irregular, making it hard for the listener to work out where we are going. In the recapitulation, the theme is played by the violins, while the piano hammers away with chords. The second movement, Adagio sostenido, moves between being tender and wistful into doubt and angst, with expressive outbursts and calm reflection. It begins with a noble chorale, followed by beautiful solos from the principal flute and clarinet. The violins play an extended melody, and instead of playing this in the easiest position possible, it's likely that you'll see them play in a higher position to create a more tender and fragile sound. You could be easily mistaken into thinking we'd transitioned into the last movement when the pace picks up, but after a cadenza, we return to the opening material to close this movement. The third and final movement, Allegro scherzando, plays with three main characters: a cheeky impishness that gives way to a furious determination, which is contrasted with a sweet nostalgia. It has intimate moments that bloom into the full orchestral colour and sweeping passion. The violas and oboes introduce the nostalgic theme for this movement. It so happened that Nikolai Dahl, the hypnotherapist, was an amateur violist, so this may be a nod to him. There will be plenty of opportunity for Alexey to dazzle us in this virtuosic finisher. The final work on this program is Symphony No. 9 in E-flat major, Opus 70 by Dmitri Shostakovich. During the composition of this symphony, Shostakovich found himself under intense political pressure to reflect Stalin's recent victories against Nazi Germany and the broader situation of Hitler's looming defeat. Shostakovich said, "They wanted me to write a majestic Ninth Symphony. Everyone praised Stalin, and now I was supposed to join in this unholy affair. And they demanded that I use quadruple winds, choir and soloists to hail the leader. All the more because Stalin found the number auspicious, the ninth. He would be able to say, 'There it is, our national ninth.'" Shostakovich was no stranger to navigating a complicated and tense relationship with the government, and this symphony was no exception. In the end, it seems that Shostakovich chose neither to directly celebrate the leadership or mourn the toll on civilians. Instead, he sidestepped these options and wrote what critics labelled an abstract symphony, harking back to classical forms. In particular, its brevity, structure, and use of smaller groupings of instruments give it these qualities. This symphony is in 5 movements, with the 3rd to 5th played without break. The first movement begins with a bright and jovial theme in the violins. The whole movement is spirited and bombastic, and you'll hear the piccolo humorously pitted against a trombone, like a mouse and an elephant. The second movement begins with a long clarinet solo. To me, it evokes the scene of a solo traveller at dusk, marked with a certain disquiet or unease in their journey. The second clarinet joins, and the strings drive an expressive climax. The movement finishes with the flute playing the original opening melody. The third movement, a scherzo, starts with a capricious character, but quickly transforms into an unhinged maniacal dance. The fourth movement, however, is the emotional core of the symphony and potentially the key to understanding Shostakovich's intent. It's centred around an extended and sorrowful bassoon solo, played by TSO principal Tani van Herk. Some scholars argue that this solo represents a Jewish mourner singing liturgical text. This lament is interrupted twice by the increasingly violent voice of military aggression, represented by the lower brass. It's these two characters and their interaction which could be seen as Shostakovich's depiction of the regime's anti-Semitism. The bassoon solo leads into the final and fifth movement, where a clownish main theme is offset by uneasy interruptions, hinting that all is not what it seems. In this sense, Shostakovich's Ninth was a critical mirror held up to Stalin's Russia, saying, "We may have won the war, but the leadership is the same and persecution remains." Indeed, he was right, with anti-Semitic campaigns ramping up in the years following and deeper scrutiny and censorship of artists. Surprisingly, the symphony was initially well received. However, it was later condemned by critics and Stalin himself. And after the premiere, it was not performed again. And indeed, Shostakovich would not write another symphony until Stalin was safely dead. That's it for Concert 101. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you online or in the Federation Concert Hall.